Yeah.
So Canada's SMR strategy really started in 2018 with what was called the SMR roadmap. And this was essentially like a 10-month cross-country conversation, which really established a vision for the development of SMRs in Canada. And then this roadmap then led to a SMR action plan 2 years later in 2020. And the action plan was really a collaborative effort between many stakeholders across the country. This included the federal government, the various provinces and territories, Indigenous peoples and communities, power utilities, industry, research laboratories, post-secondary institutions. So each of these stakeholders identified actions that they would complete that would contribute to this broader SMR action plan. And this led to a total of 520 actions, which are still being pursued and accomplished to this day. So we still have regular reporting requirements on all these actions, and the action plan is very much a big part of nuclear developments in Canada today. This also enabled a lot of collaboration amongst the stakeholders in Canada. So one prime example is the 4 provinces within Canada. So Saskatchewan, where I reside, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Alberta. These 4 provinces signed a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU, and the intent was to work together as provincial governments to develop SMRs. The 4 kind of key areas, or 5 key areas of the MOU included technology readiness, so looking at grid scale SMRs, micro SMRs, and advanced reactors, regulatory frameworks. It also looked at economics and financing. It looked at nuclear waste management, and it also looked at Indigenous and public engagement. So although this 4-province MOU has formally concluded in 2022, the collaboration between the provinces still continues to this day. And, here in Saskatchewan, we still regularly meet with our provincial counterparts, and this is all because of that initial SMR action plan that was established in 2020. SMRs have a lot lower capital investment than large reactors, so that makes them a little less risky financially. They also can be scalable, so you can deploy multiple SMRs depending on your needs. As an example, here in Canada, one province has plans to deploy 4 SMRs because they're a larger province with more electricity demand. Here in Saskatchewan, where I reside, we're starting with 1 SMR because we're a smaller province with less electricity demand. There's also a lot more siting flexibility with SMRs. So large reactors require a lot of water for cooling. With SMRs, you still require water with most technologies, but it's a lot less water. So that allows you more flexibility with where you can site the SMR. And a lot of the more advanced designs don't even require water for cooling. So that even increases the flexibility of where they can be sited. They're a lot simpler in design, so this just makes them inherently safer. There's not been one SMR that's been constructed yet, but the province of Ontario has plans to construct 4 SMRs, which are 300 megawatts each. The first will likely be operational in 2029. And then here in Saskatchewan, the province that I'm from, we are pursuing our first SMR will be operational in 2034. And the decision to pursue that will happen in 2029. That's kind of the go or no go decision, but our first one we plan to have operational in 2034. I would say there's probably 3 main key considerations. So one is economic opportunity. Bringing nuclear energy creates jobs that require skilled labor. It creates, amazing nuclear careers. It creates opportunities for local businesses, your local manufacturers and suppliers. It's an opportunity for them to get involved in nuclear supply chains and industry. So economic opportunity is one. Energy security. So here in Canada, we're the 2nd largest producer of uranium in the world. So we already have the resources for nuclear energy. That's a big consideration. But it's also more than just uranium production. Having a diverse supply of electricity generation contributes to energy security and contributes to reliable and affordable electricity systems. So energy security is the 2nd consideration. And I would say the 3rd consideration, probably the most obvious, is the energy transition. So as Canada, as other countries transition to net zero electricity grids, there's very few non-emitting baseload electricity sources. So hydro resources is one. Here in Canada, we have a lot of hydroelectricity resources, but in the province of Saskatchewan, where I reside, we don't have a lot of hydro resources. So we are reliant on fossil fuels currently. which is coal and natural gas. So as we transition away from fossil fuels, we need to replace that energy with another low non-emitting baseload source. And that's why we're pursuing nuclear energy. Challenge is definitely the cost. So nuclear doesn't have a very good track record of coming in on time or on budget. So that's a major consideration. It requires a lot of high upfront capital investment. But the nice thing with nuclear is, the plants typically last a lot longer than other generation sources. So when you look at the levelized cost of electricity, it's fairly competitive with other generating sources. One thing we're finding here in Canada, one obstacle is just the labor market. So do we have enough workers, skilled workers, to develop all of these new facilities? And we're competing with other sectors here in Canada. That's a major consideration. And then also here in Canada, the regulatory atmosphere. So we have a lot of strict environmental regulations, and there's risk that those strict regulations and requirements could slow down the developments of nuclear power. I guess there's multiple applications for nuclear energy. Currently in Canada, we have what are called CANDU reactors, which are large reactors that provide electricity. But we can look at nuclear for not just electricity generation, but also uses for industrial decarbonization. So they could be used, say, at large mining sites that require electricity and heat, because a lot of the advanced reactors and SMRs can provide, electricity, and they can also provide heat for the industrial uses. They could also even be used for remote communities in the northern parts of Canada to provide electricity and heat for the houses. We obviously have a very cold climate here in Canada, so we do rely on natural gas or diesel to heat our homes. So there's an opportunity to reduce that reliance on fossil fuels and utilize the microreactors to provide electricity and heat to northern communities. I think there's significant opportunity, global opportunities. I think there's projections that the nuclear industry could be a $150 billion industry by 2040. As you know, there's a lot of commitments made by countries around the world to at COP28 to triple nuclear generation by 2050. So significant developments and significant opportunity associated with nuclear power. I guess my suggestion would be, if you're seriously considering it, you need to start now. As I mentioned, in Canada, we started looking at SMRs back in 2018. There still has not been one SMR that's been developed, even though the work started, over 6 years ago. So it takes a long time to plan. It takes a long time to get regulations in place, to get supply chains in place, to get workers, qualified. So there's a lot that goes into nuclear energy generation. It's a very complex, and there's a lot of safety requirements, as there should be. So my advice, I guess, would be, if you're seriously considering it, the time to start is now.